Hi, I'm Marcia Bannon, and I've been a physical therapist for over 35 years. I'm one of the developers of FitTime 5, the new app coming in the fall of 2016 to get you up and moving throughout the day so you maintain a healthy lifestyle.
Hi, I'm Brett Bannon. I'm a personal trainer and I've been one for over 8 years. I'm also a developer of the new app FitTime 5. We're offering this webinar because we're seeing so many people who live sedentary lifestyles and have occupations which require them to move less and less. There's a direct correlation between movement and flexibility, and we're seeing this work in the wrong direction. The purpose of this video is to teach you some simple exercises that can help you become more flexible, improve the way you move, and feel better overall.
The first video will focus on the relationship between your legs and lower back and exercises to stretch and strengthen those areas. And then the second video will focus on the shoulders and the upper back. You all probably have been hearing a lot about core stability. We want to make sure you understand the importance of this in preventing back pain. So first, a little anatomy lesson. This picture illustrates the relationship between the hip flexors and the back. You can see how the hip flexors go from the front of the leg through to the pelvis. So, if your hip flexors are tight from sitting all day, they will pull your pelvis forward, which causes your low back to arch, which eventually can cause back pain. Some people like to wear braces to help hold their back stable, but instead, this can be accomplished by holding your abdominals and your glutes contracted, which means you're strengthening your own muscles. Now, the problem is that if your hip flexor muscles in front of your legs are tight, they will pull your pelvis forward, counteracting the action of the abdominals. This is what can happen with sitting for long hours at work or in the car. Now I'm going to teach you a couple of exercises for core stability and strengthening. First, lying on your back, I will teach you about a neutral pelvis. Put your hands on the front of your pelvis so you can feel your pelvis move. And first, arch your low back up and away from the floor. And now flatten your low back, pushing it down into the floor by tightening your abdominal muscles. And then find a spot in between the two that feels comfortable and requires you to keep your abs tight. This is your neutral pelvis. You want to remember this position when you're sitting, when you're standing, lying down. This is a stable position for your back and for your pelvis.
Another exercise we like to work is sitting perched on a chair. We're going to have you sit on the edge of your chair. You always want to sit in a chair that allows your knees to be level or lower than your hips so you can sit erect.
Okay, so now you want to scoot to the front of the chair and make sure your knees are always lower or equal in height, level with your hips. And I want you to tuck in your stomach muscles, and I want you to pretend that somebody's pulling the top of your head up to the ceiling. So you sit tall and kind of perch. And that should give your low back some support. You should feel like it's a good position. It's a neutral pelvis.
Now we're going to work on some static stretches that we like to work with a lot of our clients to work on flexibility and opening up their hips and their back. Now, as we mentioned before, everything in your body is connected. So a lot of times lower back pain can be caused from a lot of times stiffness through our hips, both front and back. So one of the first ones we like to start with is the hamstrings. This is a good static stretch for your hamstring, which is located in the back of your upper thigh, and basically is responsible for helping you bring your heel to your butt and bending your knee. So we're going to start with a standing hamstring stretch. We like to use a chair. You can use a couch or a bed, anything that you have available, even a step if that's available. Slowly, we're going to keep your hips neutral and bring one leg up on the chair. From here, we're going to make sure that both hips are pointed towards the front of your leg. So really keeping those hips in neutral alignment as we start to hinge from our hip, and you can reach that far arm towards your toe. Remember to try to, especially if your calves are tight, try to pull that toe towards your chest a little bit and really flex that foot. Might get a good stretch in the calf as well, maybe behind the knee. And slowly, as you're keeping your back straight, you can hinge forward. I want to hold about 10 seconds here, and we'll try the same thing other side. Good. As he switches to the other leg, remember our key with stretching is we always want to remember our breathing. Never hold your breath. With any stretch, any exercise, we'll always remember to take a deep breath. In through your nose, exhale through your mouth as he hinges forward, keeping his neutral spine back nice and straight. Same thing here. The idea of having something to hold on to is great, and that way, in case you ever have any problems with your balance, it's good to be able to hold on to something. Next area we're going to focus on is the quadriceps. Our quads are located in the front part of our thigh and responsible for straightening our legs. We use them when we stand, when we walk and run, even when we do squats and things like that. They tend to be some of the most overused muscles. When we're sitting, as well as our hip flexors, our quads tend to really tighten up, so it's really imperative that we spend some time to stretch these out and lengthen. Ben's going to demonstrate a standing quad stretch using a chair. Now we like to have something that your body can hold on to. Something that you can hold on to with your hands. Demonstrating, he's going to put his foot up on the back of a chair. Remember, you can also use a couch or even a bed, something that's about hip height. Ben's going to keep his foot flexed. Slowly, he's trying to lengthen out his body and extend the space between his ribs and his hip. If you need an even deeper stretch, you can try activating your glute and really squeeze that butt from here and then really bringing that hip forward. And the idea is you're trying to stretch the front part of your thigh. Just like the hamstring, don't forget to breathe. We'll hold here and let's try switching legs. As he brings his other foot up, same thing. Remember your hips, you always want to have your hips in neutral alignment, heads back, so you're always looking straight ahead. Great. The next muscle group we're going to focus on is the calves. The calves are in the lower legs, and most of you that have had tight calves or cramps know exactly where they're located. We're going to show you two different stretches, one with your knee bent and one with your leg straight. The knee bend stretch works a little closer to the heel and really focuses on your soleus, whereas the leg straight focuses a little bit more on your gastroc, both areas of your calves. First, Ben's going to demonstrate a knee bent calf stretch by placing one foot in front of the other and really working on internally rotating that back foot. So you're making sure that both feet are aligned. Now, using some base of support, he's going to make sure that he's keeping his hips aligned, shoulders back, and slowly bringing those hips forward as he drops his knee into the ground. At the same time, trying to really keep that back heel towards the ground. Should be able to get a good stretch in your lower calf. We're going to hold this here. And same thing, we'll switch sides. Same thing, other side. One foot in front of the other, slightly internal rotation of that back leg. And we're going to bend the back knee, slowly bringing that heel towards the ground, knee towards the floor. The second stretch we're going to show you for your calves is more to isolate your gastroc, a little higher in your calf. We're going to set it up the same way, one foot in front of the other, also known as a split stance, slightly internally rotating that back foot. Now use a base of support, something in front of you that you can hold on to, and you're going to lean back and do the same thing. You're going to bring those hips forward as you keep those shoulders back. Now remember, as with any stretch or exercise, you always want to keep a neutral spine. So really focus on engaging your abdominals, keeping that back straight as you bring your hips forward. If you need a deeper stretch, you can squeeze your butt. Same thing, activate that glute. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. As Ben switches his legs, he's going to really work on that pelvic tilt we mentioned earlier. Really roll your hips under as you lean back and bring your hips forward. Same thing, as we breathe, loosen up into that stretch. Now, to go along with your quads, your hip flexors tend to be more in the top part of your hips, and they also tend to get real tight when we sit and spend long hours at work and in our cars. Ben's going to demonstrate a kneeling hip flexor stretch. By placing one knee down, you can use a pad or you can even have your foot and your knee on the floor if you'd like. From here, we're gonna make sure that your hips are neutral. So we wanna make sure your hips are aligned. So really work on that bottom foot, spinning that bottom foot out, and that way your hips stay aligned. Now, keeping your shoulders back, you're gonna slowly lean back and really try to bring your hips forward. Just like with the quad stretch, if you need a little deeper stretch, try to activate that glute on the leg that you're trying to stretch. Really squeeze your butt. You should feel a little deeper stretch. We're gonna hold here into our breath. And we'll switch sides. Same thing, other side. Remember, especially if your hips are really tight, focus on where your hips are pointing and make sure your hips are always pointed neutral. Again, you can always try to work on extending and really expanding the space. Lengthen that space between your ribs and your lower hip. The last area we want to focus on is known as the piriformis, located in the top outside part of your glutes. Piriformis is one of the biggest causes of lower back pain as it connects throughout our whole body. As it gets tight, it's located right along the sciatic nerve, so all it takes is a little bit of a pinch and it'll send you sciatic pain all the way down, sometimes even leading down into your foot. Anybody that's had sciatica knows what I'm talking about. Ben's gonna demonstrate a piriformis stretch sitting in a chair. You can do this in an office chair, sometimes even a couch or a bed depending on the height. You wanna make sure that you're sitting somewhere with your knees about 90 degrees. From here, Ben's gonna cross his leg over, real straight. I like to have people use their far arm to really push that knee flat towards the ground. So the goal is to try to get your leg and your shin parallel to the floor. Now, if you're feeling a good stretch there, you can keep it right from there and just breathe into that. For those of you a little more flexible, from here we can lean forward slightly. Now, we want to keep our back straight. So as we mentioned before, we always have a neutral spine. Really keep that back straight and you can lean into it as you breathe. Ben's gonna hold here a couple more counts and then we'll try the same thing other side. So unwind your feet. It's always a good idea to reset back to neutral. Cross your other side over and then work on your posture, just sitting up real straight to start with. As you find that center, you can kind of push your knee down and slowly lean forward into it if you need that progression from the other side. Same thing with the others, in through your nose, out through your mouth with your breathing. Remember to try to relax into each stretch. Especially if you have some tight areas, our natural tendency is to want to hold our breath. So it's real important to make sure you're sending oxygen all the way down to those lower extremities. Thank you, Ben, that's great.
So that's the end of the first part of this video. Hopefully you've learned something about your back, your lower back, and your legs and how they work together and some good stretches to help you during the day.
Stay tuned for part 2.